Is it air or vacuum in an empty looking hose? Many folks say that the shock bleeder fill hose cannot be empty. That's partially true. It's not 100% empty because of the limitations of the vacuum pump, but it is empty enough to function properly in a shock filling application. Our pressure gauges measure in relation to the atmospheric pressure around us. Zero pressure on the gauge means that the system is equal to the atmospheric pressure. A closed system's pressure can be above or below the atmospheric pressure. In relation to absolute pressure, our atmosphere is at about 14.7 psi. When a system's pressure is below the atmospheric pressure, we call that vacuum. A typical $100 to $150 dual-stage vacuum pump can pump down to 0.3 pascals, which equates to 0.00004 psi above absolute pressure. That is very low and inadequate for shock bleeding purposes. We start by removing the cap on the fill hose and allowing air to enter the hose. We put the cap back on the hose to seal the air inside. The system is at 0 psi. We then pressurize the system to our test pressure of 25 psi. Notice that the oil does not fill the hose all the way. This is because there is trapped air in the hose that gets compressed to 25 psi. We mark the point on the hose where the oil reached. Now we turn on our vacuum pump to drain the fill hose. After a few seconds, we cap the fill hose again and allow the vacuum pump to remove any trapped air in the hose. You can see that the gauge is reading negative 30 inches of mercury, which is equal to negative 14.7 psi. The oil begins to foam because of the trapped air in the oil. The vacuum pump is removing it, and the process would normally take a few minutes. As soon as the vacuum pump is turned off, the atmospheric pressure enters the system through the vacuum pump and begins to fill the hose. We help it along by flipping the three-way valve to fill, which is not currently connected to the compressor. The gauge returns to 0 psi and the hose is completely full of oil. There's no need to have two fill hoses. A hose with air and a hose with vacuum look the same. The only way to know what is in the fill hose is by looking at the pressure gauge.